What hidden force allowed one forgotten American factory to build more planes than the entire Empire of Japan, a nation that had spent decades preparing for total war while also shaping the fate of young medics who crawled through the mud of Vietnam years later, haunted by the ghosts of battles they never meant to fight. In 1944, inside the colossal Willow Run plant in Michigan, an industrial monster stretching beyond the horizontal assembly lines roared 24 hours a day, spitting out a brand new B-24 Liberator bomber every 55 minutes. A pace so unbelievable that even German intelligence dismissed early reports as American propaganda, unaware that this factory alone would end up producing over 8,600 bombers, more aircraft than Japan's entire wartime output from all its factories combined. Yet the true story behind this miracle of production was not simply steel, sparks, and engineering brilliance, but the desperate urgency of a world on fire, where every rivet hammered into a wing meant one more crew that might survive a mission over Pleiku, Rabaul, or the Marshall Islands. And every mechanic who worked a double shift carried the weight of knowing a single misaligned bolt could sentence 11 young men to a fiery grave. While the world remembers soldiers and generals, the ghosts in the shadow of Willow Run were the ordinary citizens, turned wartime Titans farm girls who learned to weld in 3 weeks, grandfathers who returned to machine shops after decades, immigrants who found purpose in the thunder of production, and engineers who walked the factory catwalks at night, whispering to themselves, "We must move faster, faster, faster," because the men at the front were running out of time. And as the plant grew hotter, louder, and nearly alive with its own metallic heartbeat, the workers sometimes reported strange sights: the silhouettes of missing B-24 crews drifting along the glass observation tunnels, or the echo of far-off explosions, sounds impossible to hear from inside an American factory, but workers swore they heard them. Years later, in the Vietnam War, Kay said young combat medic named Harris, who grew up only 2 miles from Willow Run, would crawl through the blood-soaked twilight outside Pleiku on March 3, 1968, clutching his 8-bag as tracer rounds carved orange arcs above him. And he'd think of his father's stories of the factory night shift, of the way the machines never slept. And he whispered to himself that if Willow Run could keep going under impossible pressure, then he could too. And as he dragged a wounded radio operator into a crater, the man trembling and whispering about shapes moving in the tree line, Harris felt a cold wind pass through the jungle despite the humid air, a feeling just like the workers described during graveyard shifts at Willow Run. The eerie sensation that the lost were watching, waiting, warning. In that crater, Harris remembered a story his father once told him about a night in 1943 when the lights in the factory flickered. Machines momentarily died, and every worker fell silent as a chilling metallic groan echoed through the rafters, almost like a bomber twisting apart in midair. And when power returned, a supervisor whispered, "Another crew didn't make it home tonight," as if the factory itself had felt their final moments. And now, in Vietnam, Harris wondered whether the same unseen presence that haunted Willow Run walked among the jungles too, guiding trembling hands as he stitched wounds in darkness, refusing to let fear consume him. By the time he stabilized the wounded man and crawled toward the next scream, his heart pounding like the assembly line presses he grew up hearing, he understood the truth. Some factories don't just build machines. They build the spirit of the people who must later stand in places where the world is burning. And that spirit, born in a forgotten American factory that outbuilt an empire, continued its silent march through history, binding ordinary people to extraordinary moments of courage. And now, the real question, the one that should make every viewer pause, is this: if one factory could shape the fate of a global war, leave behind echoes that followed a medic into the haunted jungles of Vietnam, and still remain forgotten, would other stories of war, terror, and impossible human endurance remain hidden in the shadows, waiting for someone brave enough to uncover them.